Last season, I had a very bad ankle injury. I dislocated my ankle in my first practice with a brand new team playing in Turkey. And I had emergency surgery there because the bone didn't go back into place. So I had surgery in Turkey. I got it put back together, but like I said, my whole life I was a ballet dancer and an athlete, so I don't know what my ankle probably looked like before that injury. But at the time that I got it fixed, the surgery went well, but I ended up afterward, I had no more cartilage in my ankle, just very worn out ankle, and I did everything I could to go back and become an indoor player again. I was on cortisone shots, I had another ankle surgery to clean out scar tissue, and nothing was really taking. My ankle was like, we're done. We've had our run. And then I was sitting at home one day. My mom was watching the Invictus games on TV, which I don't even think sitting volleyball was in the games, but I went home and I was like, there's got to be something else that I can do to keep playing. So I got on the computer and Googled. I didn't even know what to call it. I was like, I don't think I called it sitting volleyball. It's like sit down volleyball, or like, I don't know. It wasn't what it's called. And then like I just happened to stumble across that USA Volleyball had a whole sitting program. And as I was in middle school and everything, or high school, I was playing USA Volleyball on their junior teams and their youth team, so I kind of felt like I already had the connection with USA Volleyball, and I reached out to everybody, people who weren't even in the sitting program, just like, hi, I'm Whitney. I played volleyball before and I had this injury. And I didn't know if at the time my injury would qualify me to play, but I just figured any opportunity that I had to continue playing, I was gonna reach out. So I did that, and maybe like a few days later, I got an email back from Elliot. He works with the sitting team a lot, and the program and the reffing, I think, as well. And he was like, hey, interesting to hear from you in your situation. And they had training camps for sitting volleyball.
Just curious, did you mention your height in the email?
I probably did.
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
I'm sure. Surprised it took you like 2 days.
That I was indoor player prior to, and that I didn't know the first thing about sitting volleyball, but if there's a way that I could keep playing, like, let's see what it's about. And so he got back to me, and I think the very next training camp they had, I went to Oklahoma, and my mind was blown. I was like, I didn't even know, I walked away with like 11 blisters on my hands. I was like, what have I gotten myself into? But it was so much fun, and I think the very first time I went to camp and I experienced it, and being around everybody else, I didn't even care or think to play standing anymore. I was just like, why when I have this opportunity? But still, again, I hadn't gone through classifications yet, which all Paralympic athletes have to determine how they class for sitting volleyball. But I just kept turning up at camps, and I just kept going, and then we're like, we'll figure out your ankle stuff later. And the rest is history. I kept going, and then I joined the national team, I think a few months later. And then I started going to a couple tournaments, and that's the first time I'd gone through the classification process. And at the time, the rules had changed since my initial start with the team. I did class, but with what they call as a review. So every tournament I would have to go. It's not a fun process. You are evaluated by different classifiers, and there's a scale, basically, of like where you fall with, depending on your injury or your situation, like your mobility or your muscle, how much muscle mass and everything you have like that. So I used to class, then I had to do it every single tournament because I had a review to make sure that you aren't getting better. And then the rules changed, and I no longer classed. At our world championship I went, and they don't quite tell you where on the scale you didn't class. Like I'm assuming I had too much mobility then, range of motion. And at the time, my ankle had already self-fused, but just in the wrong position, which still gave me more mobility than I have now. And I've had, this year, it was my last surgery, which fused my ankle. And Fusion automatically classifies you because you've eliminated all your majority of your range of motion. And I wish I had done this like 6 years ago. But you don't know at the time, and I found the perfect doctor. The situation hadn't, lined itself up in the way it had this year. So I lived the last few years in incredible pain, limited mobility, I wouldn't be standing right now if I hadn't have done that. But at the end, that allows me to class for sitting volleyball, and I'm considered a minimal disability for sitting volleyball. And yeah, that's just how it's all kind of shaken out. And then I was able to make the team this year that went to Tokyo, and we came home with a gold medal.
There you go. Okay. Well, first of all, you can sit down if you want. You don't have, it's up to you. It's okay. Because the short girl's like terrified right now. She's literally. So, talk to us about actually the beginnings of Tokyo, all the stuff that happened.
Okay.
Before you even got onto the first match.
Okay. Well, we're in a COVID situation, and so in sitting volleyball, you can be a resident we train in Oklahoma. You can be a resident and train there, which probably about half the team does, or you can live at home, and once a month we come in for training camps and train and go home, and you just train at home and fly in. So a lot of us leading up to the games moved to Oklahoma to train full time, and we were there, we were training, and we had a little bit of time off right before leaving for Tokyo, so we could all go home for a couple of weeks, like a week, actually no, it was like 3 or 4 days, and then it was like 3 or 4 days, and then we would all fly from our homes to, like Houston or like a big hub airport, and then all fly over together. And during that time, because of COVID, we test a lot. Like we get COVID tests all the time. But to go to Tokyo, you had to test 96 hours before your flight and 72 hours before your flight. So we're all at home. We're figuring out how to do this testing by ourselves. We're all on like a Zoom call, and everything seems to go fine. Some of us have already left to drive back home. And during that time, we found out someone tested positive. And we'd all been together training in Oklahoma, so we were all considered a close contact. So we were initially leaving for Tokyo to acclimate with, I think when we would have gotten to Tokyo, we would have had about 2.5 to 3 weeks of acclimating, practicing, rejoining the whole team, from the girls who weren't residents to the girls who were back home. Then we found out that everyone in Oklahoma ended up being a close contact. And because of the rules going into Japan, which I can't keep up with a lot of the rules these days with close contact, but their rule is if you were in close contact 14 days for everybody, regardless if you're testing positive or not, you have to quarantine. So I had already gotten back home, which I left 1 day earlier than everybody else to drive back home to see my family. A lot of the other girls had left it the day after, and then that's how kind of it panned out as far as timing. So we're at home, and I still have to get classed to make sure that I can play. And it just got so close with time because I was being classed. Because of the year, we didn't have other opportunities during the year to get me classed to go. So it was kind of risky, like I'm hopefully going and getting classed there and finding out if I'm allowed to play or not. So we had a positive test. Everyone had to quarantine at home for 14 days. So we ended up not practicing for 2 weeks. We missed our acclimation in Japan. The girls who were already at home were able to fly out a little bit earlier that weren't in Oklahoma, but they still delayed that a little bit. And then we had to test again, like I think a day or two after, and we found out there was another positive. So it's starting to get very stressful. We're all at home. We can't go train. We don't know what's happening. We're gonna hopefully make it to Tokyo, and when we do, we're pretty much gonna start playing the very next day. And for myself, I was very nervous because I had to be classed before going and playing, and we were showing up if timeline worked out, 1 day before we would have started playing. But saving grace is that I left 1 day earlier than everybody else, so I had that one day window where I was able to fly into Tokyo a day earlier, and the classifiers, I mean, it was very quiet about what was going on for a very long time, but then people in Tokyo were like, well, where's the sitting volleyball team? Like nobody
Which,
knows.
mentioning, by the way, you were the defending gold medalist.
Yeah,
so
and
they're
not
not
even
showing
here
up.
yet.
That's an
So
issue.
people started like questioning where are they at, and then we had to, we did everything we could to like go back and watch video from the practice, who was very in close contact, what can we do to get them out there sooner. And for myself, there ended up not being any film from the practice that I actually did do, like on that Monday. So they were like, was Whitney even at practice? Like, let's just send her out there. But I was, and I was honest. The classifiers ended up finding out, we had to tell people like, this is our situation and we still need someone classed. So the classification window had ended by the time we got out there. And 2 classifiers like stayed behind and were like, if you can get her out here by this time, we'll stay behind and get her to like check to see if she can get classed. So I flew out one day earlier than everybody else. I ended up making the classification process and I got classed. So I was like, okay, one thing's done, let's get everybody else here. So during that time, all of us are in Tokyo, like myself and I think 4 other girls, just practicing, like waiting for the rest of the team to show up. They flew out, they ended up coming in a day later than I did, which still gave us another, like a window of a day, because the person who had tested positive was driving home with another person. And that person had to fly out one day after everyone because she was in the closest contact. So one of our players flew in and like literally just went to a match to play our first game. So it was a really hectic time. We ended up having to do 2 replacements. They couldn't come. Emotionally, it was extremely hard. I think like we're all sitting at home for 2 weeks, like, is everyone okay? And we're really not. I mean, we're finding out 2 girls who've been training really hard for the past however year because it's been delayed. They can't go. I was like, I'm almost getting replaced. If we couldn't get the classifiers to stay, even though I was testing negative, was seemingly fine to play and everything, I was on the verge of being replaced just because I couldn't get classed in time. I might not be able to. So yeah, we went out there and it was stressful. It was stressful for all the girls who weren't in Oklahoma. Like, is the team gonna show up? I mean, we have like 4 girls here. Are we gonna play with 4 people? I don't even know if that's possible to do. But it was very emotional and sad in so many ways because you hurt for your teammates that can't be there. You're concerned. We haven't even been practicing for the Paralympics for like 2 weeks, like the biggest stage that there is, and we have been sitting at home like painting, like I was painting. A few girls and I like went on Amazon. We're like, let's give each other gifts, like get through quarantine of this time. So we're like candle making and painting, like trying to paint by numbers. But really there was like nothing. I mean, you could do a home workout, but it wasn't the same as being able, we hadn't touched a ball in 2 weeks when we showed up.
Wow.
That's how that went.
Yeah. So that was the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And John, can you just talk real quick about the history of the sitting in China for a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the '84 games was the first time China did anything Olympic or Paralympic, and that was when they beat us on the indoor side for the gold medal. And their Paralympic program started for women. They never really have qualified the men. One of the things that you should understand at the Olympic and Paralympic levels is the qualification process. It's often harder to be in the games than it is to qualify for the games than it is to do anything else. There are 220 countries on the indoor side, 221, and they only take 12 teams. 12 teams. 209 other teams stay home and wait 4 more years. So our men's team has only qualified a few times, and the women's team has been a medalist every time, all the way up to the gold. So when they used to be the gold medalists gets to come in and defend their titles. That's been changing by IPC rules. And China has been the #1 team as soon as the women's game started. Their starter, similar story to Super W here, former Olympian with a bad knee, and she played in 04, 08, and 012, and in doing so, she would get 70% of the sets, front or back row. She got all the sets. So we lost to them in the semis, they won the gold. We lost to them in 08, they won the silver, or we won the silver, they won the gold. We lost to them in 2012, they won the gold, we won the silver. And then in 2016, the rules that she's talking about that changed in classification stopped this gal from being able to play anymore. She no longer classified. Her injury wasn't that bad to her knee. It was more like arthritis. And they started the ibuprofen games. No, I'm not. And Invictus does have sitting volleyball, just for the men, not for the women. That said, what's happening, of course, is when you look at the team from 2004, everybody was an amputee. They all put their prosthetics off and came on. Now we're seeing players like you who are disabled, but not at the level of missing a leg type players and stuff. All of this is to say to each of you, she found her way through grit to get on the team after the injury. If you find another Laura Webster, I calculated that she could play in 13 Paralympics.
I don't know that she'd agree with that, but yeah.
Because the video I got in 2004 of them winning the bronze medal, killing the bronze medal point that I shot from the stands because I was an assistant coach, team leader guy. The video, the hitter is a high school player, and the gal playing defense in the back row is 65. So you can play, she's got decades to get better.
It's true. I mean, it's hard on your body for sure. Not quite the same way as indoor is, but your longevity, I think, in the sitting game is just so much longer. You can keep playing.
So to see a 16-year-old spiking against a 65-year-old, I'm saying it because you're the talent scouts for this area. You're the one that'll see an athlete who might be and I don't mean just for sitting, but you see a kid that's missing a leg, they need to know from you guys that there's Paralympic sport, and that includes running and all these other things. You watch the high jumpers that are one-legged, like when you're one-legged over the thing, your brain just goes, how do they do that? Well, because they're Paralympians, and everybody they're competing against has one leg. And that's who they're fighting against in these classifications. Swimming, blind soccer, not just disabled that way. If you see a blind athlete, there are tons. You just gotta come up to that mom or dad and say, do you know your kid could be competing for the US in blind sports? Do you know about this? And 8 times out of 10, they don't know that it even exists. And you all of a sudden open this door to developing confidence and amazing stuff for that kid. So you gotta be, I'm kind of shy usually in the store, but if I see a disabled person, I'm making sure. Not to mention that there's not only that, there's the Special Olympics, but most of that, because of Shriver and all the money, the tens of millions in Special Olympics, they know that their son or daughter can compete in the Special Olympics, and that's really well done. And they do volleyball, and Eric can help you find help with the sitting volleyball program.
For sure.
Our flight over to Athens, the United Pilot team is full of disabled athletes. Charter flight at the time, you don't know, COVID shit going on. Took about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to load the plane, because everybody's coming on in their wheelchairs one at a time and everything. Finally, the doors close, we get ready to take off. The pilot says, I would really like to welcome, this is 2004, things have changed. I'm so proud to be carrying all you Special Olympians to Athens. The Paralympic weightlifters would have broken through that door if they could have. We are not Special Olympians, we are Paralympians. They were so pissed off. You know, the pilot was thinking he was saying the right thing. I've got this special group of Olympians, but it's not special, they are Paralympians. You are talented.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to ask that is because you guys go, you win your first match, and then you play China, who you haven't seen since I don't think 2016, right?
Yes, and this was my first Paralympics, so I wasn't on the team when they played, well, I was like training. I didn't make the team when they went to 2016 and played them there. So this wasn't my first time facing them, but in the setting and the stage that we were in, it was. So for so many girls on the team, it's like, okay, we've been here before, we've seen them, and it's a similar situation. And we're coming off now, we just showed up, we played a couple games, which we won, but I think at the moment where we're starting to hit our jet lag after just showing up for 2 days is when we have to play one of our toughest competitors. And it was rough. It did not go so well. But I think for so many girls who've faced them before, you know, it's like we've been here, we saw the situation, we know we have to go back and work on. We know this is not a completely normal situation that we've been in before, given we just showed up and played, and we just had to like fight through and I don't know, like regroup, sort of.
Yeah. And so you had to win the next 2 matches.
Say that again?
You had to win, like if you lost, you were out. You're the defending gold medalist. You lose to China, and now you had to play. I think it was Russia was the next match, and if you had lost that match, you were done.
And we were not in an easy pool by any means.
No.
I mean, either of those teams, had we not shown up in some way to get it done, could easily have won. And they're not teams you can roll over and say, oh, well, we got like Russia today. Like it's, when we play them, it's not at all the case, and same with China. So it just felt like maybe like a different sense of unity, knowing like we all just faced something and we're in the midst of something that's been very difficult, and we knew what we were going up against and what we wanted to come out with. And I feel like during the whole time, we just kind of thought about, you think about your 2 teammates who were starters, you know, like that weren't there, and it's like, how are we gonna do this? But we have to, and I think just having a lot of trust in each other, which I think we already do, but it just felt different. It felt like a different kind of camaraderie when we came together for those games.
So yeah, you play Russia, you beat them, you play Brazil. Again, if you lose that Brazil match, you're out, right? So you have to play those 2.
Yeah.
And so what were the conversations either before, after, during the game? Is there any panic? I mean, again, defending gold medalists, I'm assuming you're not panicking, but there's certainly a sense of urgency.
Yeah,
right?
I would say it's a heightened sense of urgency, knowing like, this could be it. Is this how we're gonna go out after even all the training we've done leading up to here? And even though we had some weeks off, like we had to believe in ourselves that we were capable of showing up in that way and still coming out with a win. I don't know. I think it wasn't a ton of talk of like, get your stuff together. Like it was more of an understanding, but an understanding at a level that like we have to show up. We know what we're capable of. We know in any other situation we wouldn't feel the way that we do right now. We wouldn't feel as tense, but it was more like play our game and we're gonna be fine. Get back in our rhythm and play how we know how. And in the end, I think having that sort of calmness in a way and trust in one another is really what helped us come out with it.
When you lost to China, was the team confidence, did it take a dip?
I think it did a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it did because naturally, given our training and our outcomes before. I think we are a confident team, not overly, but we're just very confident in our skill. And then we just were thrown in with a bunch of situations we can't prepare for, and then we lost. So I think it did take a hit to our confidence, like, well, are we prepared for this? This isn't something we've seen in this situation before. And I think I can remember in a meeting it being very spoken about by one teammate to the team, like, we missed one of the players that are here. One player who brings a certain energy, or wasn't there, brings a certain energy to the game. We had to find a way to recreate that in a different way. You know, I mean, everyone's been on a team or has a person on their team that brings a certain energy, and when you know, and it's felt when it's not there. And I think rallying together to recreate that is a big part, and something we had to figure out how to do.
Yeah. So you sweep Russia, you sweep Brazil, and now you're back in the gold medal match against China, who had just beat you 5-6 days before.
Yeah.
Right. So the night before, what are the conversations? What are you guys talking about? What are you thinking?
I think it was a conversation of, I think that we felt ready. Those first few games, just because of how we showed up, it didn't feel like, it maybe felt like going through the motions. We were here, we were doing our job, but because of whatever reasons, they were able to come out on top. And I think by that going into the gold medal match, it was like, no, we've been here before. This is a situation we're used to. We've gotten some sleep. We watched some film, and we were able to prepare a little bit more than I think we were before. Really, I think that might have just been what it came down to.
Yeah.
Going in there with a sense of confidence of knowing we can pull this off, and a little bit more preparation. It felt like that was the key.
Yeah. So you win the first set, you win the second set, and you lose the third set. So now you go back in the huddle after the third set. Where's the confidence? Where's the, like, where are you guys at as a team at that moment?
Well, I think I didn't play. But I felt watching the team, I felt like we were confident the whole time. And I felt like that game that we didn't come out on top, I was like, oh, now we have a volleyball game. Like, it's not gonna be a sweep, like, you know, like, okay, they came to play this game. But I don't feel like, for myself, it ever shifted in like, can we do this? When we showed up to that game, we came to play. We knew they were gonna come out firing. We knew that they're an intense team. They are a very emotional team, so it's like, how do we stay consistent on our side of the net when they run so high on emotion, up and down? When they're down, you can feel it. When they're up, you can feel it. But I think feeling and working with our own consistency on our side, it was like, okay, they got a game. Like, what are we gonna do now? I felt very confident in watching our team. I felt like we were doing our job, and we played well.
Yeah.
I thought we did.
And so you get to the point, you guys have been training 5 years, not 4 years, 5 years because of COVID. They trained for 5 years, and their schedule was uprooted, and like you said, there was weeks and months that you didn't see each other or train, as was the rest of the world, we think.
Well,
some of the rest of the world, we
from
think.
what I hear, I mean, I think some of those teams actually like quarantined together and trained, had more training than we would have had, from what I hear. But.
So you go through the 5 years and all the pre-stuff and all the crap that went on, all the COVID stuff, losing to China and stuff. So now you get to the point, gold medal point, you guys win the point, and talk about that moment.
It felt like the weight, like taking the weight off, or like we did it. It felt like a relief. And like I said, that was my first games. I'm not sure if that's how it's supposed to feel. I don't think that's how it's supposed to feel. You know, we were all like, very excited, and it was a moment of like, we pulled it off, we did it, but it felt like a lot of weight for me taken off, and such a relief, because just considering what we had been through for the last year, right, we went a whole year doing virtual Zoom calls, like for our team camps. Training wasn't there for any of us really. It felt not sure if that's supposed to be how it feels like after you win a gold medal. We're excited and everything, yes, but it also felt like, okay, like now we can like breathe for a minute about what's just happened and like digest that, and like it's hard because I don't know what the other celebration probably felt like prior to this, but I mean, when you win a gold medal, you're of course happy, but for me it also felt like we pulled it off somehow.
And there's some plans going on with the team. So like, you know, one of your players, as I want to say, was 24 weeks pregnant, right at the time. Another said she was stepping away after the games. Another said she was going to go have a baby after the game. So it was not going to be the team.
Right.
At least in like at Worlds coming up in a couple months, it's
So
not going to be
we're
that
gonna
same team.
A very different, I think, dynamic on the team. Yes, a couple people are having babies. I mean, Laura was, if you saw the games, very visibly pregnant during playing. Another teammate is having a baby. I think the dynamic going forward, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for other people to step up and take on different roles. But yeah, I think it'll be exciting to see a lot of different people stepping into different roles and getting different opportunities.
So as a player, you watch Bill and Michelle and the rest of the coaching staff through all of this, the training, but then all the crazy stuff at the beginning, and then how they manage the game. So what did you learn from those coaches?
I think how much they believe in us. There's really, when your back is against the wall in so many of those situations and there's we didn't have control. It's like, how do we come together when there's nothing you can do about any of these situations? Like for the girls who had initially tested positive, and if they were testing negative before going, like those weren't things we couldn't control. The rule says this, they can't come. Or for myself, thinking that I wasn't gonna go, I was like, well, it's just out of my hands. Like I might not be going after training just because I might not be able to get class. I think the coaches, it showed me how much I think the coaches believe in us, and I think just adaptability, just being able to see how the coaches were gonna adapt to us being the situation we were in, and caring and understanding and support. There's just, those are the only like words I can really think of during that time that could have gotten us through, because there was nothing any of them could do about what was happening.
Yeah. And then there's a question over there.
Just the word that you just said, adaptability, kind of triggered this question that I had. Like, I was just reading about how you grew up super skinny and you always wanted to be bigger and stronger, and then you kept growing and growing and growing, and then you became this strong athlete and transitioned from ballet to volleyball, and then you became this professional athlete, and then you got the injury. And I'm just curious, like, what kind of attributes did you notice amongst your fellow Olympians? Like, were you guys raised a certain way, or like, and then I read that you even had like you developed like a fashion line. So like, what was it like? Like sometimes injuries and people sink into a deep depression. And I had an ankle injury when I was in high school, and it was like the first time I started smoking weed, because
Wow, hold on, I got let's not. Yeah, I can't have that. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but like growing up in Kent, like that was because I grew up like pretty straight, but then like I was so depressed, so how did you like overcome all that, and how were you raised, and like I'm just curious.
I think, okay, so that's I think it is, but I think that I have been since I was a kid, I knew I was gonna run track. I knew it. Like, I was a gymnast, then I like outgrew gymnastics, and I was like, well, okay, it's not gonna happen in gymnastics. I was a swimmer. I slowly started to find my way in different areas. I love ballet. Ballet is my first thing I ever did. It's something I really care about and love. And then I started playing volleyball around the same time, and I had to choose one or the other. And I had a few more opportunities in volleyball to go to college and kind of have a different future than in ballet, which I was totally up for being the starving artist in New York and like being the ballet dancer, like, you know, the arts, the passion. But I think my parents, growing up, and I had an older sister who played sports, and I think I also saw a lot of what she did, and she played basketball for Tennessee under Pat Summitt, and then she transferred to ASU.
Whoa, why is it gotta be all like that? Why?
You went to U of A, right?
Yeah, and I went to U of A, and my dad played basketball at U of A, but I think also I just had a lot of good models to see perseverance in sports growing up, but I've also just been like very, very dedicated, and I love like details. I love, like if I start something, I'm really into doing it or figuring it. And if I can't, how do I adapt to doing something different? Your goals change, your mindset changes about certain things, but I think it's really hard to explain. I don't know sometimes. There's like past that happen, like my injury, okay, it happened, now what? Yes, I went 2 years without playing any volleyball. It was extremely hard. And that's when I started to develop something else that I really love, which is fashion. And I didn't ever have the chance to do that while I was playing volleyball. I immediately went from playing college to professionally overseas. I've never had a break. And then when I had my injury, it's depressing, it's sad. And then I started to think about, well, what were my interests before I even started playing volleyball? Because I had some, and I just went back, and it's fashion. I actually designed swimsuits for women with longer torsos. And I started developing that during that time. So during those 2 years, not for her.
Yeah, not for her.
I haven't really liked horses.
Oh,
I have a hard time finding little
yes,
white pieces
yeah,
that fit.
that's what I
So
said.
you said that, and I was like, hey,
Yeah,
they're not me. They're not me.
So I started developing, some of the things that I had once loved before, and I think that resets you on a new track. When you're enjoying what you do, things just start to like fall in line, I think. I mean, it's not easy. It wasn't by any means like, oh, injury, let's go play sitting. Like I didn't find sitting for 2 years, and just as he had mentioned, most people, I felt ignorant because I had never heard of sitting volleyball, and I've been playing volleyball all my life, played USA volleyball since I was, I think, like 15 or 14, and I'd never heard of sitting volleyball until I happened to come across something. I wasn't watching it, my mom was. I walked in the room and I was like, oh. I was like, I wonder if there's anything for people with disabilities in volleyball. Did I think I was gonna be able to play on the team? Not sure, because I could still seemingly walk. At the time, I was in a lot of pain all the time, but I think I could run, but I knew I can't jump or run anymore, and that's why I don't play indoor, and many other reasons now. But I think the perseverance and just like, what's your goal? Where do you wanna go? Is like what got me through, but that wasn't so much what I was thinking about as it was happening. I was just like, well, what's the next step? I think I just was very invested in always taking what's the next step. I mean, after my first camp and getting blisters all over my hands, I was like, do you want to do that again? I don't know. And then I was like, but it was an opportunity to play volleyball, and aside from my one little ankle, like I'm a seemingly fit player to still be, I just felt like I still had so much more to give to volleyball than what my ankle was allowing. And I was just trying to find that next way to continue to do that. I wish I had like a pinpoint answer as to how or why.
When you do get depressed, it sounds like you just have like an awesome perspective and very strong, and good parents, and you were exposed to a lot of different things. When you start to get depressed, what kind of things do you do to get yourself like?
I take a step back and I say, what were your interests before this situation? And it happens in any, not just volleyball and an injury depression, or not just sitting depressed, but there are times when you're like, well, what's next? How do I get through this moment? And really, I think above all, and above being an athlete, I'm an artist. And honestly, you know how many coloring books I went through during that time? Like I was coloring, I was doing puzzles, and I think for me, that's like a moment where it's like I take my mind off the situation, but I'm also like thinking about, but you don't have to be sitting here coloring. Like you could, like your body is still decent enough to be playing a sport, or like what are other opportunities? For me, it's just like putting my mind on something that I can focus on, but it's like not serious. Nobody cares how well I color. I'm not gonna go hang them in a gallery. Like it's like just finding a small interest, like one thing that takes you away from what the situation that doesn't feel good, what that might be. And it varies for everyone. And I'm like, what's constructive? Like where can I go?
I think the reason why I was thinking is just raising I have a 12-year-old daughter, and that's the reason why I'm coaching club volleyball now. And I'm just like, do I focus her just in volleyball for the next 8 years of her life? Or do I like expose her to different interests to make sure that if there is ever an injury or if she decides she doesn't like volleyball, like hopefully she'll love volleyball.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, how much time do I spend exposing her to other things, you know? But yeah.
Well, I can't give you an answer on that, but I will say growing up, I was exposed to a lot of things, and I went through that, like, after I had my injury, I had been playing professionally, and I told everyone when I was a professional volleyball player, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be the oldest player. Like, by the time I'm done, I'm gonna be the oldest person still playing volleyball, because I only had an idea and plan to be a professional volleyball player. When I left college, I knew I was gonna be a professional, and that was it. So when I had my injury, and if I hadn't sat down sitting, what was I gonna do? I mean, I have a degree, but like, what are my other interests? And that's a hard place to be, and like even now, I'm still like, what else do I enjoy doing? Because when you're only doing one thing, and you can't control how it's taken away from you, it's like, well, what now? And it's scary. But yeah, I think finding small things that you have interest in that you don't need to measure on a scale, like how good of a colorer am I? How fast can I put it? Like I need to put a puzzle together. Like those aren't things that I did them because I enjoyed them, and I realized that those are things that I just really like doing that take me away from something that's requires more dedication.
I think there was a question.
Yeah.
Well, it's not so much a question, it's actually just an interesting statement, something I thought I'd share, just hearing your story and what John and Marwan's really been saying about this whole seminar is your challenge, it goes back to the old RPE kind of abbreviation, right? You read the situation, where you're at in your life, you planned and you started to think, okay, what could I do next? And you executed. So it's one of those things that almost it's an inspiring story to tell even the girls that, look, had you not followed those simple things, you wouldn't be where you are today. So just something that was interesting. And to your comment, I mean, I think for those of us who are parents in the room, I mean, same thing, I'm here today because I told my daughter that if you ever got into volleyball, I'd love the opportunity. I'd love to be a part of it and just go on that journey with you. And slowly but surely, I started saying things where there's opportunities. Maybe there could be, maybe not so much better coaching, but different style of coaching. And I took it upon myself to do this. And not that my club or anybody told me to do this, but I just thought, okay, yeah, same thing. Just exposing her to this if you love it, and you know, I always sort of like let your passion, let your drive do it. Don't do it because I'm telling you to do it. I loved it. I fell in love with the sport for my own reasons and because I enjoyed it. But if you love it, continue to do it, because that's the whole thing. Is right. Just I don't know.
Yeah, you want
do something. I don't ever want you to do something with that you're not passionate.
You want your kids to be resilient and be able to find their own path, and regardless of what way life takes them, to just enjoy life and keep climbing and keep
And to your point, which is something that we kind of like joke about on our team now, and it's funny, but at the same time, so I didn't class in 2018 at the World Championship. I didn't class to play like at all anymore, and I had a choice. Like, was I going to keep coming to camp knowing I couldn't play because I wasn't going to class? But my ankle at the time was degenerative, so it was going to get worse in time. We didn't know when. And at the end of last year, it really progressed. But it's a joke that, and it's true, I just kept showing up to camp as a practice player, like really for no reason, for 2 years. So I came because of how much I enjoyed the girls, the sport, and I didn't know what else I was gonna do yet. Like I had a part-time job in Tucson, and they were so generous with like letting me come to camps once a month. Everybody was so supportive of what I wanted to do, even though I, at the time, knew there was no chance of me ever stepping on the court. So I think maybe like a small lesson or token to take away is like if you or your girls like really enjoy doing something, sometimes it's just about the joy of it, and you don't know what it could lead to. Me showing up for those 2 years consistently, not going to tournaments, but like really for no reason except for like, hey guys, like I'm at camp, led me to being able to make the team when I was able to class. So I don't know. They're like, yeah, remember when Whitney just kept showing up? Like, I wasn't capable of classing at that time. I wasn't capable of playing, but I just loved everything about being around the girls. And volleyball is what I knew, and it was enjoyable. It got me away from like my part-time job for a little bit to go do something fun. So I just kept showing up, and you just don't know where some of those things can like lead you if you like stay in the things that make you feel good.
So last question before we head downstairs and play. The leadership on this team, this Olympic team, and it's a different world because again, you've got amputees and you've got people that have been through horrific things in their lives and they've overcome it, like you guys were just talking about, you know. Talk about that leadership, I don't know, structure or how it got, because again, this was the gnarliest 5 years the sitting team has ever had, except for maybe the first year they were in existence. So how did they get you guys through that? What were the things with the tools and stuff they used?
I think one about leadership is like, of course we have like a team captain. Katie at the time, a great leader, like really looked out for all of us, I feel like in so many ways, and would take things to different boards if there was an issue or anything like that. But I think also a part of being a leader on our team, and I think once you start getting to higher levels, is like how well you can be accountable of yourself and like trusting that I can trust that like this teammate's doing what she needs to do when we're not together. And I think that makes the leadership process maybe a little bit easier on maybe one person who is the captain. But I think I don't know, I think just coming together and being aware of like, I've been doing what I need to do to get here, and I think often feel like one. So like one group, it's not just like some people are doing what they're supposed to do and we have to carry the rest of them. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't feel that way. I think just being able to show up, be accountable, and then bring whatever issues or concerns we have to like Katie and her going to talk about all of us. Yeah, I think we have a good group in general of leaders on our team in different areas, you know?
Okay, good. All right, we're gonna go downstairs. We're gonna play sitting volleyball. Ariana can actually stand on this court, and yeah. Okay, but we'll go down the stairs, and you'll see a set net sitting up, and then I think John ran the ribbon, so you can use either one. But she's gonna go through and give you guys some pointers on sitting. And then she'll let you wear the ribbon, maybe, if you showered today. If you didn't shower, not going to happen. But
so I have one more fact I want to share. Anybody
wow.
see this guy right here? He's the MVP of the 2016 Paralympics.
He has Michael Phelps' torso.
Any idea who he is or how tall he is? He is the third tallest human being in the world. He is 8'1.5"
His hands are where is the height of the antenna.
And
Maybe taller.
he is pretty disabled, motorcycle accident. His parents kept him, back to you guys as talent scouts for us. His parents kept him in his room from 12 to 17 or 18 because they were so embarrassed by his gigantism. And the head coach heard about him, came and said, I will take your son, take care of him. And he first played in the 2014 Worlds is when I met him. But neat guy, and his partner is the libero, who's a little tiny guy. He's really good. It's so cute to see. Yeah. You'll win a bar bet if you can say, how tall was the MVP of the world, of the Paralympics? Because they guess 7 foot, they max out about 7'5". You know, you're going, no, taller. 8 foot? No, taller. Taller? Third tallest.